Welcome to the Bookish Spell, your cozy corner for all things bookish. I'm Angie, your host, and each week I'll be diving into the magical world of books, sharing reviews, author interviews, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so grab a cup of coffee and get ready to turn the page with me.
Nice to meet you. Welcome on to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Start off by telling us who you are and what you're about.
All right. Well, I'm BK Cavaleri. I am an indie author, and I published my first book in 2024 back in February.
Nice.
And since published my second book in October and getting ready to release my novella. So it's been a fun, exciting year almost. So, yeah.
All right. Well, tell us a bit about your first book. I guess you're coming up onto your 1-year anniversary.
Yeah. So the first book is part of a trilogy called The Remnant Archives. It is a dark fantasy romance novel based on a failed heroine. So she was meant to save her world and ended up destroying it, and goes into exile. And the story sort of evolves with someone hunting her down, convinced that she can still save the world, essentially. And that's the main male character of the book. So that's where kind of the romance starts off. Yeah, very much like a reluctant allies, a little bit of enemies to lovers type scenario in the beginning. She's a character that very much believes she's a monster and doesn't deserve to be loved in any way, shape, or form. And she kind of like her journey of redemption and believing in herself again.
Well, that is interesting because that is definitely quite the opposite of what we kind of read normally. So I am very intrigued. What was the name of the title?
I'm sorry?
What was the name of the book?
Oh, it's called Shadows Lost is the first book. Shadows Lost. And then book 2 is called Shadows Ascend. And then I just released the title for book 3, which is Shadows Eternal. So we're excited. Yes.
So when can we
go ahead.
Oh, when can we expect book 3? Sorry.
Oh, book 3. So book 3 is slotted for September 19th to be released. I'm still very much in the beginnings of writing it, so it's very skeletal right now. And I am full-time working mom, so sometimes I just can't get to the writing, and that's basically my moonlighting job.
Well, congratulations. It's a big accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah. When I was doing like, how everybody's doing the 2024 like recap yearly thing on social media. I was like filling that out. Thinking to myself, oh my God, like I actually did a lot this year. I didn't even realize because you just get into the flow of everything and you forget about how much you've accomplished and maybe even like giving yourself a moment to, celebrate it too.
I hope you gave yourself a moment to celebrate because it is a big accomplishment.
It definitely did. Yeah, it's been something that has always been a dream of mine. I started writing when I was very, very little, but had a huge passion for reading. So my mom still has like little poems and stuff that I wrote when like kind of like beginning middle school time, and I would enter little contests and stuff like that. But it was always one of those things where people kind of told you like, well, you're not going to make any money doing that, so you should find something else. But I always wrote. It just was never something that I felt like I could do or had the confidence to do. And then the concept of Shadows Lost really came from actually grief writing. So I had lost my third pregnancy and I needed something to escape to. And so it just came out that I was writing the story, and I didn't even realize that I was just actually writing out my grief, which is where this kind of character stems from. Like, you know, was pretty, well, kind of like more from me. Like, I kind of had everything that I wanted in life. I had a good job. I had a wonderful husband. But I felt like a failure as a woman because I was diagnosed with secondary infertility. I had pregnancies. I couldn't do what I felt like a woman could do. And so it's very much reflected into this character. She was supposed to be the hero, and she didn't end up being one.
I'm very interested in reading this.
Oh, thank you.
So what kind of, well, I guess we know where you were inspired to write, but as far as your journey as a writer, what initially inspired you, even at such a young age, to write?
It's got to be the love of reading. It really does. My earliest memory of reading is my dad. And when I was born, he brought these collections of like leather bound classic books like Thoreau and Alcott and all that kind of thing. And he would read to me at night from these books. And I always loved them because, you know, they had the nice ribbon and and like the gold filigree and stuff like that. But he would fall asleep and like be in the middle of the story, and I was still up. So I feel like my beginning stages of even learning how to read came from that, because I was like, I gotta read this story. Like I gotta find out what happened. And so then from there, it just really stemmed from me more poetry based first. Of course, I'm in the age where Harry Potter was first introduced, I think when I was, I don't know, early elementary, middle school, even sooner than that, probably. I mean, I still remember waiting in lines in the bookstore for like the next book, you know, so yeah, so Harry Potter was like another kind of heavy influence for me. And then from there, like my parents used to try to screen me from reading books, like, because they were worried about what I was reading in them, and they just couldn't keep up with me. So it really was a passion for reading, and then just wanting to like carry on the stories that I was reading.
It's funny that you mention that with your parents, because I think about this often. I read a lot when I was younger, and I would just pick a book, Walmart, because I lived in Maine at the time, and there really wasn't big bookstores in the small town I was. So Walmart was my go-to. And I would just pick up random books, take them home to read. And like reading now as adults, I'm thinking like, why didn't my parents be a little bit more cautious what I read? Because I like maybe just being an adult now reading, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize how
you can't stop them. You can't stop them though. It's so funny. Like I was at a family Christmas party, and my husband's cousin has a 14-year-old daughter, and she loves to read books, but she's really into kind of the rom-coms type stuff. And she was asking her mom if she could go to Barnes and Noble, and she's like, no, because you're just reading it for the smut. And I was like, and I was just like, you know what? Like, you can't stop her. Like, if she's at least she's reading it. Like, you know, if she wants to find it, she's gonna find it. With all the access that kids have, at least it's in a book and it's in like a written format, and you're still digesting something that's decent. But like, I just started laughing because I think that I was always intrigued. I really read a lot of high fantasy type novels. Like I loved Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time. That was a big one that I was reading in high school. But like whenever there was like some sort of smutty scene, I was like, yes. Show me the thrusting. Just show me the thrusting. But I was just like, yeah, you're not going to be able to stop her. Just let her read it. Like, at least you know she's in the young adult section at the most. I don't know how much smut you're going to really find in those. They're not supposed to be a ton. So
no, there isn't. I feel like nowadays, I feel like there are a little bit more higher intimate romantic scenes in YA than there used to be when I was a kid. That makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Because like I read it now.
Usually it was kind of like closed door-ish. maybe.
Right.
Like, yeah, if they were kissing, it wasn't really heavily described. It was
Mhm.
very innocent based, very innocent
Mhm.
based. Like both characters were innocent based, like the male and the female.
Right. Yes.
Uh,
Not
yeah.
totally different. So,
Yeah.
all right. So I do want to kind of circle back to at the beginning.
Yeah.
You said you were coming out with a novella. Is that the third
Mhm.
book, or that is a book in between the second and the third?
So it is a book that you can either read after Shadows Lost or after Shadows Ascend. It's kind of like an origin book, but it's a origin of the main FMC's friends and how they
Oh,
became friends.
okay.
Because they're very much friendship and chosen family is very heavy in these books. And so I just could not move on to the final trilogy stage without having like this novella, but particularly because these characters are not quiet in my head. Like they demand to have some sort of attention. Sometimes I have to write a whole separate like chapter just for one because like you gotta shut up. You gotta be quiet.
I love
So
it. I
yeah,
love it.
the novella is not the third book. It's just kind of a side
Yeah.
fun piece that I really, because I know the third book is going to be a challenge in a way of I want it to be perfect. I want it to kind of wrap up all the plots that I have running through it, set up for the universe that I'm planning on doing,
Sure.
and then yeah, like have it be pretty solid. And so I know my readers are going to want something in between to like quench their thirst while they're waiting on me to
Like,
finish up this book. Yeah.
when can we expect your
Yeah.
novella?
So novella is going to be released on February 8th. So
Oh,
it's coming up soon. Yep, it'll be
Congratulations.
my husband and I's 11th wedding anniversary
Aw.
and the anniversary of Shadows Lost, my first book. So
Wow, February sounds like a really happy month for you overall.
yeah, I
Memories
hope
you
so.
built. I-
Yeah.
So tell us, do you have a writing routine or like specific habits that help you stay productive, especially being a working mom? I'm very curious what your answer is, girl.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I live my life a lot like how I write, which is pantser.
Mm.
I'm not very good at scheduling my author life per se.
Mhm.
Which I have now a really good friend who took on the role of being my PA, and so now she's basically trying to organize all the things that I am trying to do, which is great. But as far as my schedule routine, most nights, like it's get home, dinner, get the kids to bed, and then shortly after, I hit my office, probably about 8 o'clock, and depends on how involved I get. I'll probably write for 4 hours ish at that point in time, and then get up and do the whole mom thing all over again.
Yeah.
But
You're,
yeah, that's pretty much my schedule.
you're the second person. I've been doing this now for I think yours will be the 14th episode. So 14
Okay.
weeks. You are
Ooh.
an author that is a pantser. So I have some questions.
Oh,
How did
really?
you
Okay, ask away.
So the first person I spoke to, his name was James Michaels,
Mhm.
and he wrote a crap ton of books, but he's a pantser. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious because especially you already have like essentially 4 books total that'll be out by the end of this year. Um, it just allows you to maybe come up with a story more quickly. Like, how did you figure out you was a pantser versus someone who likes to outline the plot, create all the characters, and then piece the story together? Is what I feel like most authors do.
Yes. Yeah, because I don't do that at all. Like absolutely at all. I'll start with basically like a scene that's like been in my head, and then I just let it flow from there. And it's like when you read and you just kind of check out because you're just in that world, you're just immersed in the story. That's a lot how writing is for me. I just get immersed, and a lot of times I just let the characters kind of decide where the
Mm,
flow is going to go
mm,
versus like having everything scheduled out and plot based. for me, it's almost too restrictive, right? Because then I'm trying to stay much focused on this plot that I had planned out, but the story may not be even going in that direction. And in fact, the prime example for this is my book 2, Shadows Ascend. I knew I needed a second book. There had to be a second book to kind of address some of the things that would lead up to this final installment. I had no idea what that second book was going to turn out to be. Absolutely no idea. It ended up being very deep and emotional book compared to the first one, which is interesting for the reasons of why the first one even was developed, and that, you know, from me grieving. But yeah, so pantser writing, I kind of stumbled upon it. Really, as far as like labels and terms of writing, when I first started marketing my book, I had no idea what they meant by tropes. I'm like, what is this? I was very oblivious. I had no idea that there were different types of writers. But I've learned that, I definitely don't do an outline. I don't even set up like what a character would be in their name or what I want them to look like. It just kind of spills out on the page as I'm writing.
That's encouraging. I've been an inspiring writer pretty much all of my life. And I feel like I get very overwhelmed when I try to draw the plot, the outline. And I try to create the characters. Like, I feel like I don't think I could do it. Now, I could go into my head and imagine a scene all you want. But once it comes down to writing it, like the planning is hard. So I feel like when I eventually start to write, I will probably be a pantser myself.
I think sometimes you can get caught up too much in the details. I mean, essentially, you're a storyteller, right? So, I mean, it's very similar to like if you were going to tell your kid a bedtime story and like what you would kind of pull out of your head for that. And I mean, you draw your resources from many different things. Something might pop in your head. Doesn't mean that I don't do research, because I do. I weave a lot of different mythology into my books.
Nice.
And I love that aspect. I don't necessarily tell my readers it's there. It's just very fun when somebody picks up on it. And so like I'll do that kind of thing. I'm like, oh, this character really has this like certain vibe. I wonder if there's any kind of like, you know, mythology or characteristic that's based on that person that I could, you know, make this kind of weave into. The novella, the character in there, Ji, which is one of the FMC's best friends, her character is based on this mythology from China called the Four Beauties of China. And so I was like, this is perfect. And so then her character, even like her features and stuff, very much took on kind of more of an Asian type persona. And so, you know, it just went from there. She already had that from the book 1. I was just very lucky to stumble upon this mythology for the novella. But yeah, I like try to do those things. So there is some planning per se, but it comes as you write, not so much setting it up first. I think you can get so hung up on details like what to name them, what their hair color is going to be. Like, I think when it comes to storytelling, you're really trying to develop emotion, and like those things don't necessarily matter. And if you get hung up on them, you just kind of use your little parentheses or your brackets, and then you just move on from there. If you're getting stuck on it, and you just go back to plug things in. Drafting, you know, my first drafts are never going to be the same as my final drafts. Sometimes can end up being very different. So,
So tell us a little bit about your approach in developing characters. Are they inspired by people you know, or just kind of
I get this question a lot. I mean, perhaps I think they're inspired by a quirk or a personality. A lot of them, there's a character in the book that's very innocent and young, and I just imagine her how I was as a kid, very much of a dreamer and just kind of more ignorant to the world but strong and just able to just like, you know, be solid in who she was. And so I think sometimes there's little pieces of me and my personality that I'll pull out and then make that the character that I'm familiar with. In some ways that makes it easier to kind of develop them because it is like kind of something personal to you that you probably know yourself very well at, you know. Sometimes they can be based on, for me, maybe a friendship or a loss of someone that I just really want to honor in a book. So there is one in particular that I'll want to do when I do my little archiver universe to continue with these books, that I will probably heavily base on that person too. So yeah.
So no, I know we didn't talk about this. You are a self-published author or a traditional?
Yep. I'm an indie author and self-published.
Nice.
I did query for about a year and a half with Shadows Lost. And during that time, that was actually before I found an editor to really like hear out my heart and put it back together again for this book. But I did have one publisher that was highly interested in my book, and I was so excited. They asked for the whole manuscript, and we were talking a lot back and forth. And then ultimately, they ended up passing up on the book. It just needed editing that they didn't have time for, right? And so I was like, at that point, you know, because querying is a lot of work, actually. You know, there's programs that are set up where you can, you know, see all the publishers that you can add, you know, send to, and then it can kind of track that. But each different publisher has a different format and how they want you to send things. And some of them want 3 chapters, some of them want so many words, some of them just want a synopsis, some of them just want in your words what the book is about. And so it takes, you know, sometimes hours just to apply to a couple. And so that can be very tiring. But after I got denied on that last one, I was like, I'm still going to do this. This is my goal. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. I'm going to self-publish. And I went about trying to find how I did that. I have no idea. I'm still learning as I go, even now with getting ready to publish the novella, which is technically kind of my third book that I'm releasing. You still are learning things along the way.
Yeah.
So, and in some ways, very, wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, honestly. I was like, oh, I will just self-publish my book and put it out there. No, so much more than that. So much more.
Really?
So, yeah.
What kind of advice would you give other authors when it comes to self-publishing? Like, where would the best place to start?
Oh, I think the best place to start is to talk to other indie authors. You kind of find like your North Stars with that and see if because they're going to always say like, I wish I would have did it this way. They're always going to have that piece of advice. I mean, I made mistakes with just even simply ISBNs. I had no idea what I was doing with that. And now I know. But I think the first thing that you need to always keep in mind is that if this is your passion, then it's likely that you're doing it for you first, which is very important. And that if you're doing something for you first, that means you got to let that imposter syndrome go and just do it. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn things along the way. It's never going to be perfect. You might publish a book and there's a bunch of editing mistakes in it. I mean, it happens, and you learn from that process, and you change from it. But I think the most important piece of advice is to just do it. I mean, just go for it. Because in the end, it's for you. Nobody else is like in your office, in your room with you, or watching you write or anything like that. And a lot of times people don't know anything about you until you shove your book off and say, hey, read it. You know, so you could kind of publish and people wouldn't even know until you really announce it out there. And so I think we got hung up on ourselves first, and you just got to let that go. Take a deep breath and just do it.
Good advice. Right.
Yeah.
I do feel like that is a pretty valuable piece of advice because I feel like a lot of authors struggle with that, especially like, oh, my book's not good enough. My book's not good enough. I'm gonna have editing, grammar marks, and just things like that.
Yeah.
But maybe just gotta shift our perspective. Is that writing a book, becoming an author, is the same as doing any other type of job. Practice makes perfect, and I feel like that's what a lot of authors, self-published, inspiring authors, writers have a difficult time getting it past. Is that we want the book to be perfect from the first
and
release.
And it if it makes you happy, that's the most important thing. You are not going to please everybody. Not every review is going to be a great review. There are going to be people that will just feel like it's their job to tear you down. There are going to be amazing people you find that are just going to lift you up. The highs and lows are just astronomical sometimes. But yeah, you cannot defeat yourself and stop yourself from growing. If it's your passion, you just got to go for it. And just accept the fact that you have really done it for yourself first.
I feel like that is great advice to keep at the front of your mind, because kind of what you just said a few minutes ago, there are people who do dedicate their life to leaving really critical reviews, like really bad. And they take pride off of, I rarely leave a 5-star review kind of thing.
I know.
But I feel like they do it more as like a gimmick. So like, if I'm telling you this is a 5-star read, and you know it's good because all of my other reads are 1 star, 2 stars, whatever. But I feel like I rate books differently. When I first read a story, my thought is always like, how did a human being just create this in their head and put it on paper? So I'm like, that person's always 5 star, 5 star, 5 star.
Whatever accomplishment you have done. Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful too. Like, I think because, you have an aspiration to be a writer too.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably that plays a role in it, because it is such an amazing accomplishment for you, because this is your future goal, right? So it is interesting. Sometimes there's always that debate about reviews being for a reader or an author, but sometimes, like, even when I'm reviewing a book, I'll look to see on like what are the negative ones on there, but then also like how many likes are on that. Like, are they writing this as like a satirical piece to just get attention? And then some of the things that people like get upset about, that they knock stars off, it's like, you were like, trigger warnings. You were warned in the front of the book what the trigger warning was. Like, you for the most part, you pretty much know what you're getting into. And you also pretty much know what genre you like as well. So if you're reading something kind of outside of that, you got to keep an open mind when you do your reviews, because otherwise it's just not going to be the same as something that you like, just like are hungry for. Like, I'm hungry for, like, I love fantasy. Like, I thrive on fantasy. I don't even think I've read a rom-com, honestly. No. I don't think I have. I do love my classics. Like, Jane Austen is still very much my North Star person. I think I've read Pride and Prejudice, probably at least 50 times.
Really?
I mean,
love. Is it hard to tackle? Is it hard to like read? Is it like hard to like tackle that book? I'm imitated by it. Like I don't know. I'm scared.
Pride and Prejudice. It's a beautiful book. It's very much eloquent in its like sentence structure. It is kind of more like that older based English. But it's ultimately just a beautiful story about human flaws. And that are still very prominent now. And I just admire her tenacity to even write a book during the era that she grew up in, because they would not accept women authors, so, and that's why a lot of us, some female authors still have their hyphenated, or their first letter of their first name. You don't really know the gender. I didn't do that specifically because I was a female author. I did that because of my professional job. But part of me was like, I really want to put my full name on this because I want to break that glass ceiling kind of concept. But that's still very much prominent. It's better now. Definitely getting better now, but it's still there. But so that's why I admire that book. And so when I read it, I feel like empowered reading it. So it doesn't necessarily scare me too much to read it, but that's what you need to think of it as. It's like an empowerment reading. But then you also like learn, different words. That's what I like about reading. It's like, oh, I never heard of that word before. I'm also very, very bad because of how voracious that I read. I mispronounce words all the time. I have reading comprehension, but I never actually heard that word aloud. So it was, what was it, like contemplative. I like always said it as contemplative. I don't know, but anyway, so it's and my husband was like, that's not how you say that word. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? That's the fun part about reading. So there's always something for you to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I love when I get to those parts. It's like, Sarah drove across the. I don't know what it is. Like, I mumble it.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, okay. You get the concept, though.
Yes.
You get the concept. It's just not. There's a short period of time these past couple of months that I was doing a live reading Shadows Lost. So I go on Thursday nights and I read like a chapter or two live, and even some of the words that I wrote myself, I'm like, it's the same thing. I was just like, quickly read over it. Yeah. So, but yeah.
That's one thing I love about the Kindle is that when I don't know what a word, you just click on it and it tells you the word. And before I got I have like a basic Kindle, like an actual e-reader. Yeah. Before that, I had what's it called? A Fire tablet, which is essentially just like Amazon's tablet.
Yeah.
But what I loved about that is when you read books and you click on the word, it has a speaker, so it pronounces the word that you highlight.
That's awesome.
Game changing.
I love that. Yeah. Yep.
I'm the
worst. Love that.
I'm the absolute worst when it comes to pronouncing names. Terrible.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm bad at also remembering them, but yeah, same thing. I mean, I mispronounce the names of the characters in my book. I will admit that. Mm-hmm. I do. There's a proper way of saying it, and in my head, I don't say it. When I was doing the read out loud thing, people were like, "Is that how you say that?" And I was like, "No, probably not. Probably not. This is just how I say it." I remember somebody getting really mad at one of the either SJM or Rebecca Yaros or whatever on a panel, how she like mispronounced like a traditional name or whatever, and they just thought that was like very insulting to like the culture where that name came from. And I was just like, okay, but like I do that all the time. Like,
I didn't see that.
I feel like it's like a personal preference, right? Like I don't know, like even sometimes characters when you're reading, what they said they looked like in the book, but in your head you might tweak some things. You're like, oh no, I like him better with black hair or whatever. So I don't know. I just think that's kind of intriguing. But
there was what was it? A few months ago, I finally read The Haunting and Hunting Adeline.
Oh yes.
So I finally that was like my first like dark romance book. Usually fantasy. Yeah. I
mean, that's like that. I haven't read that book, but that's like off the cliff. Like if that's your first dark romance, that hits heavy.
I went from 0 to 100. I was very traumatized.
Yeah, you jumped right in.
I literally had no. And then that is one of my problems too. Is oftentimes when I read a book, I don't read it back. I just jump right into it. Very rarely I read it back. I just jump into the story and see where it goes. So I had no idea what Haunting Adeline was. I actually thought it was like a ghost story, to be honest. But so when the H.D. Carlton, who the author of the book, she released like a new cover with an actual human guy on the cover, which is supposed to be the male main character in the story. And I'm just like, you just ruined the story now. Because the whole time I was reading it, I envisioned this guy to look like, have you ever seen the Umbrella Academy off Netflix?
Yes.
You know the big guy Luther? He was like the big...
Yeah.
His personality, the male character in Haunting Adeline, if you get to read this, just remember, his actions, his attitude, his behavior was very like Luther from Umbrella Academy. It's like you're supposed to be this macho guy and everyone loves you, but it's like it's kind of funny. Like I laughed a lot in that book. Really.
Oh, did you?
Yes, a lot of people tell you
like
that.
A nervous laughter.
It was almost like so cheesy. Like it's like he's the guy, this amazing man, and everyone wants him, and he's the best man on earth. And this is like, it was a great story.
I have a friend of mine. She rants about this book all the time because I think it really was her like first experience too for like a dark romance, and I think she like physically counted the number of F words in that book, and she was like, it was ridiculous. Like it was just like astronomical how many times that word was said, and I think there was something about how many times like a tear just slid down her temple, like it was just mentioned over and over and over again. It's just like, even to this day, I feel like every time we talk about that book, she still tells us about it. I was like, yeah, I remember when you told me that the first time. Like but it's still like it haunts her. Like it's so funny, but like that happens to me. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that like, you know, you were talking about how the character on the cover kind of like ruined it for you. That happens to me a lot with like voice actors. Oh, like definitely. I'm like, oh, they have like a sexy voice, you know, and then you see the actual person, you're like, no. No. I think the first one was I used to like to watch the show Archer. Did you ever watch that show? Or do you know of it? It was like a cartoon adult show, and the main character, Sterling Archer, he'll have like this phenomenal voice, and then you like saw the voice actor and you're like, no. He also voices Bob's Burgers. I don't know if you ever watched that one.
I watched Bob's Burgers, but I didn't hear this other show.
That character looks exactly like Bob's Burgers, the guy in Bob's Burgers that he voices.
Oh,
I was so disappointed.
Oh, yeah. It's bad, I know. There's some books that I one audio book ever I like didn't like DNF a book ever in my life was Twisted Games by Anna Hung, I believe.
Anna Hung? Yeah, really? Okay.
And I maybe got through like 2 or 3 chapters, but it was the audiobook and the guy's voice. I'm sorry to whoever was doing that voice acting, but it cringed me out so bad where I just like, I'll read it another time.
Yeah. You're like, this is probably not an audiobook for me.
Mm-hmm. It was just one of those where like the voice.
Well, people love that series though.
People do. I have one of my cousins is the one who keeps telling me to read it because she loved the series, but she read the book. So I try to do the audio. I'll read it.
Yeah.
The voice just didn't match the words on the page very well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I couldn't do it. But that was the first time I ever like started a book and then like, I'm not gonna read this. First time ever I did that. It was terrible.
I have rarely listened to audiobooks for like anything other than like a self-help book. Really? Because those are usually like too textbooky for me. I'll fall asleep reading them. So if I listen to them, they're easier to kind of get through and get the message or whatever positive vibe that you're trying to improve yourself upon. But I can't even recall a time where I've read or listened to an audiobook that was like a fantasy or something like that.
No. Fantasy, impossible to do it with an audiobook. I tried, and it's just too much going on, and like the noise listening kind of blocks my ability to visualize what's happening in the story. So you can't, like when you're reading fantasy, you're now immersed in that story. You're there seeing everything happen.
It's a new world.
Yes. You cannot do that with audiobooks. It's hard. What I did find doing audiobooks is thriller books.
Okay, yeah. I could see that. Like the suspense there. Yeah.
Those are really good. Matter of fact, most thrillers, like Frida McFadden or like some of Colleen Hoover's, I will do audiobook. Because
well, I guess it ties into those like true crime stories people like listening to too. So I could totally see that because people are obsessed with those.
And most thriller books are not very long, so it's like 6 to 9 hour long book. Doesn't take you that long to finish it, so it's like good for like when I'm cleaning the house or doing something because I can still hold my attention. But what I tried to do ACOTAR in the audiobook because everyone said that graphic audios were like amazing. They were good, but I promise you, I think I got through all of the books, 4 books. I had one that didn't finish. Ask me anything about ACOTAR and I know zero. It's like a wasted time. I have no idea. Literally no idea what happened.
Oh, that's so funny. So I'm like that because like I've read those so long ago, especially the first book. Like I read it so long ago that like some of the stuff that people still rave about with that book, I'm like, I don't know if I remember it that much or that much being so profound that it changed my life kind of thing. But okay. It's a great story.
Taking the world by storm. It really I feel like it's kind of dying down a bit, but people did freak out for it last year, I know. And I tried.
I did. I also I do this as like a little game. Is like I try to like when people do like the book stacks and stuff, I get very excited when there isn't an SJM book in there. I'm like, there's a book stack that does not have Throne of Glass or ACOTAR in it or whatever. But that's because she has so many books, right? And they definitely hit the spot for people as far as like fantasy realm is concerned. So I would do her.
I do wanna, because I feel like I sometimes have FOMO because I still have no idea. I didn't read any of the other books, but I don't know. I'm very strange when it comes to reading stories. I never could really read something that's trendy. Is that weird? I always read like
I think because you we were talking, my friends and I were talking about this the other day. It's like a trending book, you almost have this expectation of it now. And for whatever book, pretty much if it's trending, people think it's phenomenal. And then sometimes they can like really let you down in a weird way. And I think like kind of like even how you do, like where you just like go into a book without reading the synopsis, right? That's kind of very similar when you read something that's like non-trending because you pretty much haven't heard of it, don't know anything about it, don't really know anything about the author. There's like no preconceived notions of that book, which I think is, I agree, almost better. I avoid the hype books, but also sometimes the hype books are books that I've read like 5 years ago. And I'm like, why now? So, but yeah, I could see that, like how it's more enjoyable to read something that's just not the trend.
I do that all the time. Like I tried several times to read the ACOTAR series. I even tried reading the physical book. For some reason, I just couldn't get into it. My brain was just elsewhere. But I know, like, I will probably read it sometimes this year because now I feel like the hype is dying down a little bit, especially because the 3rd, 4th Wing book, Onyx Storm's coming out. and everyone's going to be obsessing over that, which I probably won't read till later on by the end of this year.
I'm so bad. I have yet to read those.
I read them. They were actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I love when like the actual, not, my thing is I don't always just focus on the romance in the books.
Yeah.
I love like what's happening outside of the romance.
Yeah.
The story in,
the plot.
Yes. The story in Iron Flame and Fourth Wing, all those is really, really good. It definitely kind of reminds you like what's going on in our country, how we always feel like we're lied to. We don't really know what's, going on. It's really good in that sense. But the romance,
the political intrigue.
Yes, it's such a good story. And with Fourth Wing, everyone just fixates on Violet and Xaden. Nothing else. You hear nothing else about that story except for them. No one talks about that. The plot is amazing.
And dragons.
Yes, it's such a good story. Like I don't know. I really was a fan of Fourth Wing. I was.
That's good. So you're excited for Onyx Storm.
I am. I'm excited, but I'm scared. Like I'm very strangely one of those people who.
Is this going to be her last book in the series, or is it?
No, I don't remember. I want to say she was supposed to. No, this is the last book of this series. Okay. I'm pretty sure. So I think we find out, I don't know, like what the actual ending is. I'm pretty sure, because I kind of thought she was doing 5 books. But then again, I'm not for sure. I don't remember.
They could be like kind of like how ACOTAR is, where it like spins off from a secondary character or something like that. Which I'm sort of fond of, like, I don't know. I fall in love with the main FMC and MMC, and like I just kind of want to know the happily ever after, what happened after. Like I want more from that, and like especially if it's a first person point of view and it's told that way, like I want to hear their thoughts again. So sometimes when it spins off on another character and you're seeing everything through their point of view, I'm like, yeah, but what about give me more like scenes of those characters that I loved in the very beginning. This is like why you're reading it, right?
Well, if you ever do decide to read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame would make you so mad.
Iron Flame, I think, has a lot of miscommunication tropes in it, right? Is that like from my understanding, it's a very frustrating trope for some people, and so I think that's what I heard the most about it. Like that's the most frustrating. Like if you would have just like took half of that out, like we would have gotten to like where we needed to be for this, the characters themselves.
It was almost like we experienced both of that in the first book. Why are you taking us full circle now, halfway through the second book, basically doing it all over again? Kind of a thing. But I'm not gonna lie, the ending of Iron Flame did not disappoint. Like it was my jaw's on the floor, and I'm like, oh my god, what's going on? It was good. The ending was good, but it took me like 6-7 months to finish it because I was so bored at the beginning of the book.
Yeah,
it was.
So I always try to remind myself that when I write, because I get annoyed with that too as a reader. I just like kind of need some sort of like action or something that, even if there is that interwoven miscommunication, there's some sort of like subplot happening that I can pay attention to that like offsets it a little bit, because otherwise you can get very long-winded and it just gets frustrating. So yeah, I could see that. Could see why.
It was almost like there was just nothing going on for the first half of the book. It was just like her and Xaden liking each other, don't like each other, like each other, don't like each other, and there was no plot in between. It was just mainly that, and I was reading it, and because I want to be a writer, I was just kind of like thinking like, what's going on in this author's head? Like, how did she come to this conclusion of what is in the book? It added nothing to the story. It really did. So my thing is like she just wanted to be a really long book.
Wasn't it like, I've heard that maybe some people thought she was like rushed through that one, so it didn't get as much like maybe attention. That's the rumor. I don't know for sure, but I had no idea.
I didn't look much into it, but I know it's like it was a little bit of torture.
So I've heard.
But the ending didn't disappoint. I was really happy with the ending.
Yeah. I mean, I've got that impression.
Yeah, and I think I'm scared of the third book because I'm a kind of person that I don't mind waiting for the other books to come out because sometimes I get too attached to a book. It's like I'd rather stay where I'm at than reading the last book right now and finding it's all over. So, like
I have seen people that like they won't read the last book of a series because they don't want it to end. I was like, I could never do that. I'm sorry, I couldn't. I also have a weird quirk where I read the last sentence of every book before I start the book. Otherwise, I can't put the book down. I can't stop reading. Like I'll get no sleep. I'll be up till like 3 a.m. I get up at 4:30 a.m. Like I cannot do it. It's weird. I need like some sort of closure. It could be one word. It does not matter. For some reason in my head, it's okay then to shut the book and just move on with my life. So I cannot even imagine leaving a series unfinished. There's one series that I've done that for. One. I just could not suffer anymore through it. So
which series?
Oh, it's like an unpopular opinion. It's the Cruel Prince series by Holly Black. I could not.
Really?
In my street team, some of us are divided, but we have quite a few that like love that series.
Really?
And I call it the book that shall not be named. Whenever we talk about it, like this is the book that shall not be named. From what I hear is that the other books make this series better. But I was just like, after I read that one, and I love anything to do with Fae. So like my book Shadows Lost is a Fae and shifter type genre of a book. I grew up Irish mythology. My aunt still thinks like pukas exist and all that kind of stuff. And so I love that, but like I just could not, I don't know, it was just blah. And I was like, I cannot do any more of this. I did not connect with any of the characters. I was like, nope, I'm done.
That I feel that is a hard, when you're not connecting with the characters, it's really hard to get through the story because reading a story is very based off of what we're feeling while reading it.
Yes.
And I do feel like that's what happens when I read ACOTAR.
Yeah.
I can't for some reason connect with those characters. Even though like the story itself, I know, I love that. Like I eat that up all day long. I love fantasy.
Yeah.
The characters, I feel like zero attachment to them. So
yeah.
I understand that. I haven't read those books, the one that shall not be named. I haven't read that yet.
If you love it, you love it, and that's like I'm not bashing the book by any means. Holly Black is a phenomenal author, but like I just could not do it. So that's the one DNF series that I have had. So
I feel like it's probably about like 90, you can even say 99% of the TikTok books TikTok last year. I didn't think I read any of them.
Yeah,
it's terrible. The only thing I really read was Fort Wing and I read all the Emily McIntyre, the Never After series.
Yeah.
And there was one more and Divine Rivals. But I know there was a lot of like problems with her. I'm sorry?
Okay. No. I think the Divine Rivals goes back and forth between whether or not people like it or not.
And it's all based on who the author was as a person. It was like really political.
Yeah.
With her, where people did, they want to ban her and all this stuff. I'm like, at that time, I just got back into reading them. I'm like, what's going on? Her book was amazing. Why are we hating her? I have to look up everything.
That's always going to come up. It came up with Colleen Hoover. It's come up with J.K. Rowling. Like, whether or not they're a good person, we don't know. We don't know them personally. You don't know. But if you love the story, you love the story. I'll never be somebody that believes that books should ever be banned, ever. I think it's the start of something very evil, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I just will never agree with blacklisting any author to ban their book.
So when
I don't know.
when I was reading the Haunting Adeline, I kept reading, like, when I read a book and I'm really enjoying it, I'll look up the author. So apparently, like, her books were getting banned a lot. And as I read it, I found out, and like just reading it itself, the plot of the story, it's like, well, now it makes sense. Why is the government, they want to ban this? Because is she speaking the truth right now? Because it's very much about like trafficking and all that. And my thing is like, you banning this book is only making us believe that what this girl's saying in this book is true.
Yeah, usually when it comes to like government banning books, if there's something said in it that there's a message in it that they don't want to be shared.
And that is the reason why I finished it, because her plot, it wasn't even, had nothing to do about the characters. Her story in the book was so like, it just totally shifts your perspective on life and how it's a very real thing what she wrote about.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's like it's something about the author that you don't agree with, like their stances. AI is a big thing going on right now, that kind of stuff. Like, you don't have to read the book. So you can just leave it alone. Like, you don't have to ban a book specifically. Like, you don't have to read it, you know?
It's true. I just, so I didn't know J.K. Rowling was like this political person. I just found this out. Now, if you look on her Twitter, she has a pinned comment that was, I was on the floor laughing because it was so unhinged.
Yeah, I try to ignore that part, but like I know people like they will not support Harry Potter anymore because of that. And it was just, I mean, when I was a kid reading those books, I did not have, I guess I didn't even care to like know about the author. I just loved the story. But my favorite memory of Harry Potter was, I was in a program in middle school that we would go over to the elementary school and help little kids read. And for whatever reason, I think he was in 4th grade. I had this little boy and he hated reading. He did not want to read. He hated all the workbooks. He just loathed the exercises that he did. And one day I brought in, the first Harry Potter book, and I said, look, if you do this first page of your workbook, I'll read to you the first chapter of Harry Potter. And he was like, okay, because he was kind of interested in it because he liked wizards and that kind of thing. So he did the first page, and then I read Harry Potter to him. So he was like super intrigued. So then it moved on from, I'll read a page, you read a page, and Harry Potter. By the end of this like little program that we were doing, I think it was like a semester, he was reading on his own.
Nice.
But it was because it was something, you found his niche. You found something that was going to be exciting for him, and Harry Potter was that. So like, before I left that program, I bought him that first book and gave it to him. But like, so books are powerful. And it's sometimes it's just very sad to see them be judged based on the person that wrote them. I mean, I can see why. So I understand, but sometimes I'm just like, I'm just not going to think about that because I love those books so much.
I know. Like, I was so surprised. I'm like, wow, this author is brave. She has such a huge following, such a big franchise. And you put the N on top of that, you pinned it. It's like, girl, you're savage. I was so shocked.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, also, I mean, she's made it, right? So she has really like nothing to lose. Nothing to lose about that.
I thought that she's already at a very successful point. I'm sorry, my little girl's crying. Here.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. There, watch that. Sorry. I don't know. It was crazy. I didn't know all that was going on. I'm always a little bit behind on the news.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you just like don't want to know. Like, you just don't want to research it. I just don't want to know. I mean,
I still love Harry Potter regardless.
I know. I mean, you're already in it. You've already involved yourself in it, right? So it's like hard to like nope, I'm going to get rid of, I mean, they're sitting right here. I'm going to get rid of all my, my Harry Potter books because I don't like the author anymore. But also that means that maybe we should pay more attention a little bit to who's writing and what they're writing and maybe the messages that they're trying to tell us in the book. Yeah.
I mean, that's a good way of even just watching the movies. Maybe shift my perspective. I mean, we just watched them all for Christmas. My daughter's 3, and she like loves Harry Potter. So I actually can't wait for her to read the books. Oh. It's just sad seeing J.K. Rowling like that, but I still love her work.
Because in some ways, like, you don't want to be a hypocrite. Like, you do have certain stances that you believe in, and you don't want to support somebody that believes in something that goes against something that's very passionate for you. I mean, for me, it's like, you know, basic human rights is like very passionate. I'm not going to support anybody that does not support something like that. And so it is what it is. But like, we all have our personal opinions. I think some of those things, like, we've been very heavily influenced to feel either a form of praise or disgust when something comes up that's like triggering, like, and I think we don't realize how heavily we've been influenced to feel that way about a specific thing, but it's very human, right? Like, to attach an emotion to an opinion, right? They are two separate things, but we bring them together, and it can be very powerful or it can be very problematic.
Yeah, it can. I feel like I'm one of those people, though, that especially like people in the entertainment business, you have a very big influence on people.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be putting that out there when you have such a huge impact on people. Because for one, it's not fair to those people, because they feel like just because you're this famous person, they feel like they know you, who you are, that they're going to go and follow you. I always felt that way about people in entertainment, because there's some people who are like, you know, ride or die for their famous favorite person or whatever. So that's just what I feel like. If you're gonna be in the entertainment business, just be entertainment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Try not to pull it all in. Yeah, the personal side of it. Yeah.
You know, another way is if you want to be political, then be famous for being political. But don't, you know, like, no. No. You to influence, you're influencing everybody, and, you know, someone's going to follow your lead, and maybe that's not what they actually believe in.
Yeah. So. Yeah. People might not realize, like, what you're delivering to them, and they'll just attach to it.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like you should have just kept it to yourself, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion. We still love Harry Potter.
Yes, regardless. They are. We are full of opinions. It's okay.
That's true. Okay. Everyone's full of opinions. All right. So now we got a little
part of life.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
I will start practice rambling. So I did have a question for you. I know you love fantasy, but do you have any plans for maybe diving into a different genre for the future?
Yeah, no, not really. Like, my future plans are really to do this Archiver universe, which is still going to be very much a fantasy. I wouldn't mind doing more of like an urban fantasy. I think that would be fun. It's less world building because you pretty much are utilizing
so what is
world.
Oh, okay. That's what urban fantasy is?
Yeah, so it's like pretty much you're in like the modern world, but there's magical aspects, that kind of thing. That's there, or like acceptable or whatever. I do have a story somewhat like that. That's just kind of sitting on my computer. But as far as like going outside the fantasy realm, probably not, strictly because like this is where I live in my mind. I sometimes don't like the real world and enjoy just escaping it. And I want to give my readers something to escape to, because I feel like there are a lot of people that probably feel that way. And so I guess that's just a passion of mine to provide that for somebody. I always just like my main goal that I tell myself, even when I get hung up on, you know, but nobody's reading my book, I don't have enough reviews, like I didn't get any Kindle pages read for the day or whatever. I just say ultimately in the long run, I just want to be a good storyteller. So if I can do that for myself, then that's where I need to be.
Nice. All right. So my next question for you is, do you prefer standalones or series?
Series. Always a series. Love a series. Yeah. I don't like kind of like what we talked about. Like, I don't want it to end per se, especially if it's one that I really, really enjoy. So yeah, it's almost always series. If it's a standalone, I'm like, you should write more.
I find that most standalones are like drama or thrillers because you can fit it all in one book. Actually, there was I forgot what her name was. Her name is V.F. Malley. So she's an indie author. I forgot what her book was called. Shoot. Darkness something. Regardless, I was an ARC reader for her. I forgot totally. Sometimes I could be terrible ARC reader because I forget. But I eventually end up getting around to it. So I forgot I had to read her book. I read it. It was a really short book on Amazon. Like I think I read it in less than 2 days. But the way that this girl told this story, my mouth was on the floor.
Aww, that's awesome.
It was a drama that's how it just kind of came to my mind. It was a drama, but she fit so much in like 200 pages.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
I can't find her. For some reason, she's not posting on her social media. I think I have to send her an email because I want to know where she's at. This book needs to be advertised on social media. Yes, because I was like totally like, what did I just read in 200 pages? It was so good. So I feel like maybe a little bit drama. You could get those, but definitely fantasy.
Yeah.
Needs to be a series.
Yeah, fantasy for sure has to be a series. It's very rare. I think that is a niche for some people though, that readers will latch onto if you can do a very good standalone that is a fantasy. Any aspiring writers out there that are looking to do something like that, I think that more readers are requesting that in the fantasy world, but it's difficult. Like even like the novella that I wrote, my editor and I were talking, she's like, this kind of progressed quickly. And I was like, but it's a novella. So like, I only have so much that I can do. So we go back and forth on trying to find the right pacing too, where it's not like one way and then all of a sudden, oh, they're here. And you're like, what happened? Where was the in between? Where was the development? Because you can't develop as much in a shorter book with fantasy. It's just very, very difficult because there's just a different world. There's nothing there that somebody can relate to, like our world we can relate to. And fantasy, especially high fantasy, there's nothing there that you can relate to. So it's difficult. That's why novellas sometimes are nice for fantasy in a way, because maybe you've already established the world. Like Shadows Lost, I established the world. So some things I can reference, but then I have to say like, hey, you cannot read this book before you read book one because you're going to be lost,
So how many series do you plan to create for your universe?
Okay, so I think there's five different ones.
Girl.
And so they're all based on a character. So there's Remnant, there's going to be Raella, there's going to be maybe Lily. I don't know if I'll do Lily or not. Definitely Avalon, and I think Nasima is another one. Yeah, so they're there. They're all characters that I actually have already written like a little bit on. And this started because I was like, you know what, it'd be really cool. I have these different like stories floating around to just bring them all together in one gigantic plot that you don't really know you're reading from Shadows Lost, but that's where it all starts.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, that's going to be amazing.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's just all depends on if I can keep carrying on. Some days are harder than others in indie author life. So
I can imagine. And I feel like maybe this past month or two has been a little bit difficult for everybody. I know I've been feeling it.
Yep.
We gotta find our new
Yeah.
normal, because I don't think we'll ever go back to normal.
No.
We gotta find a new
or just more books to escape into.
that was yes. I like since I don't know, maybe I'm just having like a withdrawal from trying to get through Christmas. It was a struggle, let me tell you. And get through all the holidays, and now it's just like I want to just stay in bed and just sleep for like a week because I'm so exhausted from getting through the holidays while still trying to survive.
Yeah.
That I don't know,
Absolutely.
the past couple of days I've just been so like I'm not on my social media right. I haven't been keeping in contact with the people I need to for the podcast and all this stuff. And, like I need to escape. So I started a book this morning and it felt good. It's called Spells and Spices. So it's a witchy novel.
Oh yeah. I've heard of it.
My first witchy novel. I've done a podcast with her a few weeks ago, so if you want to listen to her.
Okay.
Her name's Kay Clancy.
Yeah.
I'm only in like a couple chapters. It's actually really good, and it got to the point where like it's making me feel good. You know,
good. Yeah,
so, like okay, I gotta clean up now. So reading it motivated me to like, oh, I gotta fix the bed. Let me do the dishes so I could start, reading more of this book. So it was what I needed. So I do appreciate all of you as authors creating that little escape for us, just to get through life because life's been pretty brutal. It's been.
And that's why we write sometimes too. It's like I just need to escape a little bit within myself. Yeah, that's great though. I'm glad it's giving you a like. In some ways, if you can like unload the heavy, even from reading, then like you feel more inclined to do other things that are productive for your life. That concept of filling your cup, right? Like if you don't necessarily take care of you first, you can't give back to somebody else if you have nothing in your cup. If you don't have anything left, like that pertains to like family, you're not giving the best of yourself. So if you can find a way to like fill your own cup, then you can influence and be the mom you want to be for the day, or be that coworker for somebody, or whatever that might be. And so it's important. So it's awesome that book could do that for you. That's beautiful, actually.
Yes, it was good. I had a little bit of a reading slump. Like I read 0 in December. And I had all these plans to read all of these books. 0. Literally 0 got done.
It just was rapid fire too, December. It was just so quick. It felt very short. And everything's emotionally charged. So it's a lot to kind of handle.
That's a lot. So I just hope and pray things get better soon for everybody because it's stressful.
It is.
All right. I got a few questions for you that are mainly about you and not the writing.
Okay.
I'll let you go because we've been talking for a while. My first question is, what's a hobby or interest that you do outside of writing?
So I love exercise.
Really?
Yes. So before I was doing all my writing stuff, I was a health coach online. I'm a physical therapist by trade, so that's my daytime job. But I love working out. So that's my hobby. That's what I do to fill my cup. It helps me with like some of like my mental health stuff too, because I get really bad anxiety and depression sometimes. But like I literally every 5 days a week, I get up at 4:30 a.m. and I do a workout before I go to work. And it just gets me started for the day. So I enjoy like weightlifting and that kind of thing. So that's kind of like one of my main hobbies that I do at this point in time. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have a side question to ask. So you work in physical therapy, and this is a thought that I had a while ago when I talked to that author Kay Clancy. She works in like a science lab, something like that. I forget, somewhere in that genre, but still like in a medical field. You write fantasy because it's an escape from that what you see from a doctor's perspective. I feel like that's what it makes so much sense.
For sure. Well, healthcare is hard in general. And I'm an outpatient physical therapist, so I will treat people sometimes 2 to 3 months at a time. You get to know people and you get to know their lives a little bit, good and bad. And you know, I call myself like an extroverted introvert. Like I have to be extroverted for my job, but like when I'm out of that job, I'm pretty much done. Like I almost feel bad for like my son at school because like I do not converse with the moms in the like pickup line or anything like that because like I'm done with the world at that point in time, and everything that comes with it. So yeah, it's very much an escape. Sometimes it'll influence me in my writing a little bit, but like half the terminology that I would use in the physical therapy world does not belong in fantasy anyway. So it is actually
It's so interesting. I am more than sure there are probably plenty of other authors that are like a physician, doctor, or something, and they're making these high fantasy books, and we just don't know their true profession.
You don't know. You don't know.
It makes sense because, like, my day job, I'm actually a professional tarot reader. So what I do all my life, and I'm a life coach. So I do very much one-on-one interaction with people every single day, and like now I do this podcast. So like when I'm off the clock, I'm very much like that myself. I want no interaction.
Yeah. I joke around all the time that I was like, it would be wonderful if my full-time job was being an author and then my hobby job was physical therapy. Like that would be a nice balance for me. But you never know. You never know. But right now, that's how it is.
You'll get there. Just gotta keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So I
tell myself.
I have 2 more questions for you, and I'll let you go.
Okay.
One of them is, what is your go-to comfort food or favorite meal?
Oh, like favorite meal. Like I gotta separate these out.
Okay.
Favorite meal is pasties. Are you aware of what pasties are?
No.
I'm a Michigander, but my family is from the UP, which pasties are very prominent in the UP. It is similar to like Hot Pocket sort of thing. It's a pie crust that's like folded over, and inside is like meat, potatoes, carrots, rutabaga, and onion. It's like, and you bake it, and then you eat it with butter and ketchup. Anybody who eats pasties without butter and ketchup or puts gravy on it, sacrilegious. But this is like a rite of passage in my family, like to know how to make pasties. Like my mouth is watering thinking about it. It would be my last meal. I had this like grand plan that my kids would love them too for some reason, and I was going to make them every year for their birthday, and like they do not care for them. It's very sad. But they are quite a production to make too. And in fact, when I did my little PR boxes for Shadows Lost, pasties are featured in that book. So if you ever read it, it's in there. I released a little recipe card for pasties on there that are my family's recipe. But yeah, that would be my go-to meal. But
thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Bookish Spell. I hope you enjoy our magical bookish journey together. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to leave a review. It really helps. I'll be back next Wednesday with more enchanting stories and author insights. Until next time, keep the magic alive in your hearts and on your bookshelves.